The frozen mountain pass had a reputation that scared even the most experienced soldiers. It sat high above the clouds, surrounded by sharp cliffs and endless snow. The wind there never rested. It screamed day and night, cutting through thick jackets like knives. Temperatures dropped so low that metal could freeze skin in seconds. Breathing felt painful and every step could be your last. This was not just a place on the map. It was a natural enemy. For weeks, this narrow pass had been blocking everything. It was the only route connecting friendly forces to a trapped unit on the other side of the mountains. Food, medicine, and ammunition could not get through. Wounded soldiers were running out of time. Helicopters could not fly safely because of the weather and enemy fire. Ground convoys failed again and again, either turning back or being ambushed. The mountain pass had become a deadly wall. Enemy fighters knew how important the pass was. They had taken positions on the high ridges, using the natural cover of rocks and snow. From above, they could see everything that moved below. Anyone who tried to cross became an easy target. They used the weather to their advantage, hiding in white camouflage and striking when visibility was low. Even advanced technology struggled in the extreme cold. Drones lost signal. Equipment froze. Plans collapsed. Inside the command center, the mood was heavy. Maps of the region were spread across the table, marked with red circles showing failed attempts. Each mark represented lives lost or missions aborted. Officers spoke in low voices, aware that every delay made the situation worse. A trapped unit was counting on them, sending short, desperate messages whenever communication allowed. Time was running out. The problem was clear, but the solution was not. Sending a full assault team through the pass would mean heavy casualties. The enemy had the high ground, perfect visibility, and strong defensive positions. Air support was unreliable because sudden storms rolled in without warning. Even the most experienced mountain troops admitted the odds were terrible. The pass had earned its nickname among soldiers, the Frozen Grave. As discussions continued, one truth became impossible to ignore. The pass could not be cleared by force alone. It needed precision, patience, and someone willing to face the mountain on its own terms. Someone who could move silently, survive the cold, and strike without being seen. The kind of mission that most soldiers would never volunteer for, because survival itself was uncertain. Outside the command tent, snow fell steadily, covering tracks and swallowing sound. Somewhere beyond those mountains, friendly soldiers were waiting, cold, tired, and wounded. Every hour felt heavier than the last. The commanders knew that if nothing changed soon, they would be forced to make an impossible choice. Risk many lives or abandon the trapped unit. The mountain did not care about bravery or rank. Punished mistakes without mercy. Even nature itself seemed hostile. Avalanches were common. Ice cracked under pressure. A single loud noise could bring tons of snow crashing down. The enemy didn't even need to fire sometimes. The environment did the killing for them. Reports from earlier attempts painted a grim picture. One patrol never made it halfway before being spotted. Another was forced to retreat when frostbite disabled 2 soldiers. A supply convoy was hit from above, losing vehicles to both enemy fire and the cliff's edge. Every failure added to the fear surrounding the pass. Yet, despite everything, the mission could not be abandoned. Too much depended on it. Lives, morale, and the success of the entire operation rested on clearing that narrow strip of frozen ground. The mountain pass stood silent and white, daring anyone to challenge it again. Inside, the room went quiet. No one wanted to say it out loud, but everyone knew what kind of mission was needed now. Something different, something risky, something that sounded almost unthinkable. And in that silence, the future of the operation hung in the balance, waiting for someone brave enough to step forward and face the frozen mountain alone. The meeting inside the command center continued long into the night. Outside, the storm grew stronger, shaking the tents and covering everything in thick white snow. Inside, the air felt just as heavy. Everyone knew the situation was getting worse. The trapped unit had sent another message, short, broken, and filled with urgency. Supplies were almost gone. Injured soldiers were losing strength. Waiting was no longer an option. The commander finally spoke the words no one wanted to hear. A large assault would fail. Sending many soldiers through the pass would only create more casualties. The enemy was watching every path, every open space. The mountain itself was just as dangerous as the fighters hiding on the ridges. If this mission was going to succeed, it had to be small, quiet, and precise. A new idea was placed on the table. One sniper. Alone. Someone would move through the frozen terrain without drawing attention, find a hidden position, and eliminate the enemy lookouts controlling the pass. Without those eyes watching from above, friendly forces could move through safely. It sounded simple when spoken, but everyone in the room understood the truth. This was almost a suicide mission. The sniper would have to travel for hours in freezing temperatures, carrying heavy gear. There would be no backup, no easy escape, and no guarantee of extraction. One mistake, a single slip, a bad shot, a sudden storm could mean death. Even if the enemy never fired a bullet, the cold could kill just as easily. Silence filled the room as officers imagined the risk. No one volunteered at first. Many of the soldiers there were experienced, brave, and loyal, but they also understood reality. They had families. They had seen what the mountain did to people. This mission required someone willing to accept that they might not come back. Then she stepped forward. Her movement was calm, almost quiet, but it changed everything. She did not rush or raise her voice. She simply said she would do it. Some people looked up in surprise. Others exchanged unsure glances. She was known for her skill, her patience, and her accuracy. But this mission was different from anything before. Questions came quickly. Had she fully understood the risks? Did she know the terrain was worse than before? Did she realize there would be no support? She listened without interruption, her expression steady. When she spoke again, her voice was firm. She had trained for conditions like these. She had survived missions where others could not. And most importantly, she believed this was the only way to save the trapped unit. Still, doubt filled the room. Some officers hesitated, not because of her record, but because of old beliefs and fear of failure. The mission already felt impossible. Letting one person go alone into that frozen hell felt irresponsible. What if she failed? What if the enemy spotted her immediately? What if the weather turned worse? She stood her ground. She explained her plan in simple terms, how she would move before dawn, how she would avoid known patrol routes, how she would use the terrain for cover. She spoke about patience, timing, and waiting for the mountain to work in her favor instead of against her. Every word showed preparation, not emotion. The commander studied her for a long moment. He saw exhaustion in her eyes, but also determination. She was not trying to prove anything. She was offering a solution when none existed. Finally, he nodded. The decision was made. Once approval was given, everything moved quickly. Gear was checked and rechecked. Weapons were cleaned and protected against the cold. Ammunition was limited, making every shot precious. Maps were reviewed one last time. There would be no second chance. As she prepared, other soldiers watched silently. Some felt fear for her. Others felt hope for the first time in days. She did not seek attention or praise. She focused on the task ahead. To her, this was not about glory. It was about people waiting on the other side of the mountain. Before leaving, she paused at the entrance of the camp. The wind howled, and snow covered her tracks almost instantly. She took one deep breath, adjusted her rifle, and stepped forward into the darkness. Behind her, the camp lights faded. Ahead of her lay the frozen mountain pass and a mission that most believed could not be done. As the decision became official, the reality of the mission began to sink in. Even though she had volunteered with confidence, the weight of what lay ahead was heavy. This was no training exercise and no team operation. She would be alone in one of the most dangerous environments imaginable. Every step, every breath, every choice would depend only on her. Some officers still struggled with doubt. After the meeting ended, quiet conversations followed in corners of the command center. A few questioned whether sending one person was truly wise. Others worried about public and internal backlash if the mission failed. The mountain had already defeated larger, better supported teams. Trusting everything to a single sniper felt like gambling with fate. She could sense the doubt, but she did not let it affect her focus. She had faced this before, not just in this mission but throughout her career. People often underestimated her calm nature, mistaking it for weakness. They did not see the discipline behind it or the years of training that had shaped her instincts. She had learned long ago that fear did not disappear. It was controlled. While others talked, she prepared. She laid out her gear carefully, checking each item one by one. Her rifle was cleaned and tested again, its metal protected against freezing temperatures. She adjusted her scope, knowing that cold air and wind could change even the smallest calculation. Ammunition was counted and packed with care. She would not have the luxury of extra rounds. The cold was already testing her. Even inside the camp, the temperature was brutal. She wrapped her gloves tighter and flexed her fingers to keep blood flowing. Frostbite was a real threat, just like the enemy. She reviewed medical basics in her mind, knowing she would have to treat herself if anything went wrong. There would be no medic waiting for her. As she studied the map, memories of past missions surfaced. Times when plans had fallen apart. Moments when survival depended on patience rather than speed. She remembered lying still for hours, waiting for the right second to move or fire. Those experiences had taught her that rushing meant dying. The mountain would demand the same respect. Outside, the storm eased slightly, but the wind remained sharp. Visibility was low, which could help or hurt her. Snow covered old tracks, erasing signs of earlier failed attempts. That gave her a small advantage. At the same time, shifting weather meant unpredictability. A clear path could become deadly in minutes. A senior officer approached her quietly. He did not question her ability. Instead, he asked one simple thing: if she was afraid. She paused before answering. She said yes, but fear would not stop her. The trapped unit needed help, and this mission was their only chance. Sometimes courage meant acting even when fear was present. Word of her mission spread through the camp. Soldiers watched her with a mix of respect and concern. Some wanted to say something, but no words felt right. She nodded to a few familiar faces, offering a calm look that suggested confidence, even if she felt the pressure deep inside. As the time to move grew closer, the doubts around her slowly turned into quiet belief. Not because the mission seemed safer, but because she carried herself like someone who belonged in that challenge. She was not chasing danger. She was answering it. Before leaving, she stood still for a moment, listening to the wind. The mountain felt alive, breathing cold air across the land. She understood that it would test her in every possible way. But she also knew that understanding terrain, weather, and timing was part of her skill. This was not about strength. It was about awareness. She adjusted her pack, secured her rifle, and took one last look at the camp. Warm lights glowed behind her, representing safety and comfort she would not have again for a long time. Ahead was darkness, snow, and silence. The doubts, the arguments, and the fear stayed behind. With steady steps, she moved forward. The mission had reached a point where words no longer mattered. Only actions would decide what happened next. The mountain awaited, and she was ready to face it, knowing that everything depended on what she did next. She left the camp before dawn, when the world was still dark and quiet. The sky was heavy with clouds, and the moon was hidden behind them. This was exactly what she wanted. Darkness was her cover. Every step away from the camp felt like stepping into another world, one ruled by ice, silence, and danger. The snow was deep, swallowing her boots with each step. She moved slowly, carefully placing her feet to avoid making noise or losing balance. A single wrong step could send her sliding down a slope or trigger an avalanche. She used her weight carefully, spreading it across the ground, moving like a shadow rather than a soldier. The cold was cruel. It crept into her gloves, her boots, and her face. Her breath came out in short clouds, and she controlled it to keep it quiet. Sweat was dangerous here. If her clothes became wet, the freezing air could turn it into ice within minutes. She moved at a steady pace, stopping often, letting her body cool before continuing. As the light slowly began to change, the mountain revealed its true shape. Sharp rocks cut through the snow like broken teeth. Narrow paths twisted along cliffs that dropped into nothingness. Wind pushed against her, trying to knock her off balance. She lowered her body, keeping close to the ground, using rocks and snowdrifts as cover. Hours passed. Time lost meaning. There was only movement, breathing, and awareness. She listened to everything, the wind, the shifting snow, distant sounds that might be enemy patrols or just the mountain settling. Her senses stayed sharp. Fatigue tried to slow her mind, but she forced herself to stay alert. At one point, she froze completely, pressing her body into the snow. In the distance, she saw movement. Enemy fighters were patrolling a ridge above her path. Their white gear blended with the snow, making them hard to see. She waited, barely breathing, as they passed. Her heart beat hard, but she stayed still until the danger moved away. The terrain grew steeper as she climbed higher. Her muscles burned, and the weight of her pack felt heavier with every step. She adjusted the straps to keep balance. Slipping was not an option. She used her hands as much as her feet, pulling herself up icy slopes, feeling the cold bite through her gloves. The weather changed without warning. Wind picked up, throwing snow into the air and reducing visibility. What could have been a problem became an advantage. The storm covered her tracks and hid her movement. Still, it made navigation harder. She checked her position often, using landmarks and memory instead of technology that might fail in the cold. Several times, she stopped completely, resting behind rocks, letting her breathing slow. She drank small amounts of water to stay hydrated, but not enough to risk freezing her body. Food was limited, and she saved it for when she truly needed it. Discipline kept her alive. As she moved deeper into enemy-controlled ground, the silence felt heavier. This was where mistakes were fatal. No friendly voices, no radio chatter, just her and the mountain. She reminded herself why she was there. Every step forward meant hope for the trapped unit waiting beyond the pass. By the time she reached a higher elevation, daylight had arrived fully, but the clouds kept everything gray and dull. Perfect conditions for staying unseen. She slowed her pace even more, scanning the terrain ahead. Somewhere above her was the position she needed, the place where the entire mission would either succeed or fail. Her body ached, her fingers were stiff, and exhaustion pressed on her mind. Still, she continued. Training took over where strength ended. She had not come this far to turn back. Finally, she reached a narrow stretch of rock overlooking the pass. She did not move into it immediately. Instead, she waited, watching, listening, studying the area. This place would become her home for the next phase of the mission. The hardest part was not the cold or the climb. It was the patience. And as she settled into position, she knew that everything from this moment forward would depend on waiting for the perfect time to act. She stayed completely still as she settled into the position she had chosen. It was not comfortable, but comfort did not matter anymore. The spot was hidden between dark rocks, slightly above the mountain pass. From there, she could see the narrow route below and the ridges where enemy fighters moved. This was the place she had imagined again and again while planning the mission. The first rule was patience. She did not rush to set up her rifle or look through the scope. Instead, she watched with her naked eyes, slowly learning the area. She studied how the wind moved the snow, how shadows changed with the weak daylight, and how often the enemy appeared. The mountain was quiet, but not empty. After some time, she carefully prepared her rifle. She moved slowly so no metal sound would give her away. The cold made everything harder. Her fingers felt stiff, and she had to be careful not to drop anything. One mistake here could end everything. She adjusted the scope for distance, light, and wind. In these conditions, even breathing could affect a shot. Hours passed. The enemy fighters below followed patterns. Some stood guard for long periods. Others moved between positions, stopping to warm themselves or talk. She memorized their behavior, who stayed longest, who felt relaxed, who looked alert. She was not just looking for targets. She was looking for the right moment. The wind was her biggest challenge. It changed direction without warning, pushing Snow sideways and shaking her position slightly. She made small adjustments, testing angles, calculating how much the wind would move a bullet over distance. This was the kind of work that could not be rushed. One bad calculation would waste precious ammunition and alert the enemy. Her body began to suffer. Lying still in freezing temperatures caused pain that slowly turned into numbness. She flexed her toes and fingers slightly when she could, careful not to move too much. She controlled her breathing, keeping it slow and steady. Hunger came and went, but she ignored it. The mission came first. At one point, clouds moved lower, and snow began to fall again. Visibility dropped. For a moment, she considered whether the weather would stop the mission. Then she realized it was an advantage. The falling snow hid small movements and softened sound. The enemy below became less careful, believing no one could see them clearly. She focused on the highest enemy lookout first. That position controlled the pass. If that lookout went down without warning, confusion would spread. But she waited. She needed certainty. She watched until she was sure of the distance, the wind, and the timing. Time felt strange. Minutes stretched into hours. Her mind tried to drift, but she forced it back. She reminded herself why she was there. Soldiers were waiting. Wounded men needed help. This position she held was the key to everything. Finally, the moment began to form. Two enemy lookouts moved closer together, talking and laughing, unaware of what was above them. Another fighter left his post briefly, leaving a gap in their coverage. This was what she had been waiting for. Not luck, but opportunity created by patience. She adjusted her rifle one last time. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger. Her breathing slowed until it almost stopped. The world narrowed to one point in her scope. No fear, no doubt, just focus. She did not fire yet. She waited one more second, then another. In that quiet moment, everything she had trained for came together. She knew that once she took the first shot, there would be no turning back. The mountain pass, the trapped unit, and her own survival were now connected to what she would do next. And as the wind briefly settled and the target stood still, she knew the time had finally come. The moment arrived quietly. The wind slowed for just a second, almost as if the mountain itself was holding its breath. She felt it in her body before she saw it through the scope. This was the window she had been waiting for since the mission began. She took one last slow breath and let it out gently. Her finger tightened on the trigger with calm control. The rifle fired once, sharp but quickly swallowed by the wind and falling snow. The first enemy lookout dropped instantly, never understanding what had happened. There was no shout, no alarm, only confusion. She did not pause to celebrate or even think. Her training took over. She shifted her aim smoothly, already moving to the next target. The enemy below began to look around, unsure of the sound's direction. Snow and fog made it impossible for them to see where the shot came from. The second shot followed soon after. Another lookout fell, this time causing panic. Voices rose. Fighters shouted to each other, pointing in different directions. Some ran for cover. Others froze, unsure whether to hide or fight. This confusion was exactly what she needed. She stayed calm. She did not fire wildly. Every bullet mattered. She waited between shots, letting the enemy expose themselves. When one fighter moved into the open to get a better view, she took him down cleanly. Each shot was precise, controlled, and purposeful. Below, the enemy's communication collapsed. Their strongest advantage, the high ground, was turning into their weakness. They could not see her, but she could see them. The falling snow worked in her favor, hiding her position while revealing their movement. Some of the enemy fired blindly into the mountainside, hoping to scare the sniper away. Bullets struck rocks far below her position. She stayed still, pressing her body into the cold stone, making herself as small as possible. Fear tried to rise, but she pushed it down. Panic would get her killed. She changed her position slightly, moving just enough to avoid being predictable. Her muscles screamed in protest, stiff from cold and tension, but she ignored the pain. She focused on angles, distance, and timing. This was not about speed. It was about control. One enemy fighter tried to retreat down the pass to warn others. She tracked him carefully through the scope. He was moving fast, slipping on the snow. She waited until he slowed for a moment, then fired. He fell, and the warning never reached the rest of the group. Now the enemy was truly panicking. Some abandoned their posts. Others hid behind rocks, afraid to move. The pass, once locked down, was breaking apart piece by piece. She had done what an entire unit could not. She had taken away their confidence. Her rifle began to feel heavier. The cold made her hands slow, and she had to fight stiffness with small movements. She checked her ammunition. Limited, but enough if she stayed disciplined. She reminded herself not to rush. Rushing led to mistakes. Through the scope, she saw the final key position, the last lookout controlling the narrowest part of the pass. He was nervous now, constantly shifting, glancing in every direction. She waited, letting him tire himself out. Fear makes people careless. When he finally stepped into a clear spot, trying to look down the path below, she fired. The shot echoed faintly, then vanished into the wind. The lookout fell, and with him fell the enemy's control of the mountain pass. Silence followed, heavy and unreal. No more movement, no more shouting, just wind and snow. She did not move immediately. She stayed still, watching, listening, ready in case someone tried to locate her. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. The enemy was either down, hiding, or fleeing. Only then did she allow herself a small breath of relief. The hardest part was over, but the mission was not finished yet. Friendly forces still had to move through the pass safely. She reached for her radio and sent a short, clear message. The pass was clear. Enemy positions neutralized. Move carefully. As she lowered the radio, exhaustion hit her all at once. Her body shook slightly, not from fear, but from cold and effort. She had done her part. One sniper rifle, used with patience and precision, had changed everything. Now the mountain waited to see what would happen next. After she sent the message, she stayed in her position, watching the pass carefully. Even though the main enemy lookouts were down, the danger was not completely gone. Surviving fighters could still be hiding, scared and confused, waiting for a chance to attack. She kept her rifle ready, eyes scanning every rock and shadow. Time passed slowly. The wind continued to blow snow across the pass, covering the bodies and erasing signs of what had just happened. The mountain returned to its cold silence, as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Soon, she noticed movement from the far end of the pass. Friendly forces were advancing cautiously, just as instructed. They moved slowly, spread out, using cover and watching every angle. They had learned from earlier failures and were not taking any chances. From her high position, she could see their careful progress and felt a quiet sense of relief. As the soldiers moved forward, no gunfire met them. No ambush followed. The enemy positions that once controlled the pass were empty or silent. A few fighters could be seen retreating higher into the mountains, choosing escape over a fight they could not win. The power had shifted. She stayed focused, ready to act if needed. At one point, a shadow moved behind a rock near the path. She adjusted her aim, heart steady, finger ready. But the movement stopped. Either the enemy was gone, or fear had frozen them in place. She did not fire. Discipline mattered even now. The friendly unit reached the narrowest part of the pass, the place where so many attempts had failed before. This time, nothing happened. No shots. No explosions. They moved through safely, step by step. It was a moment that many had believed would never come. Down below, soldiers began to realize what had happened. Some looked up at the ridges, confused and amazed. They had prepared for a fight, not silence. Messages came through the radio confirming it. The route was open. The trapped unit would be reached. For the first time since the mission began, hope spread through the operation. Medics and supply teams prepared to move in. Vehicles that had once been turned back now advanced slowly, bringing food, medicine, and warmth to those who desperately needed it. From her position, she watched it all unfold. She did not smile or celebrate. She stayed alert until the last friendly soldier cleared the danger zone. Only then did she allow herself to relax slightly, lowering her rifle and stretching her stiff muscles. The cost of the mission finally hit her body. Fatigue crashed over her like a wave. Her fingers were numb, her shoulders burned, and her legs trembled from hours of stillness and tension. But inside, there was a quiet satisfaction. Not pride, not excitement, just the knowledge that the risk had been worth it. Radio messages continued to come in. Clear. Safe. Mission success. Each short message confirmed what she had already seen with her own eyes. The mountain pass, once a frozen death trap, was now open ground. As friendly forces secured the area, she prepared to leave her position. Extraction would come later once conditions allowed. For now, her job was done. She took one last look at the pass, memorizing the scene. The snow, the silence, the narrow path that had cost so much before today. She thought briefly of the trapped unit on the other side, finally seeing help arrive. She thought of the commanders who had feared this mission would fail. And she thought of the moment she had stepped forward and volunteered when no one else would. Slowly and carefully, she began her descent, moving away from the rocks that had protected her. The mountain no longer felt like an enemy. It felt like something she had survived. The operation would be remembered for how smoothly it ended, not for how close it had come to disaster. Most people would never know exactly what happened on that ridge, but the results spoke for themselves. Lives were saved, and a path once thought impossible was open again. The journey back was quieter than the climb up, but it was not easy. Her body was exhausted, and the cold still refused to loosen its grip. Every step down the mountain demanded focus. A tired mind made mistakes, and mistakes in this place could still be deadly. She moved slowly, carefully, using the same patience that had kept her alive before. As she descended, the sounds of the operation behind her faded. Radios crackled less often. The mountain pass was now under friendly control. Supplies were moving through. Medics were reaching the wounded. The trapped unit was no longer trapped. Even though she could not see it anymore, she knew lives were being saved because of what she had done. When she finally reached the edge of friendly territory, soldiers spotted her and rushed forward. There was no cheering, no loud celebration, just quiet looks of relief and respect. Someone helped take the weight of her pack. Another offered warm water. She accepted both without speaking much. Her voice felt tired, like the rest of her. At the camp, she was checked by medics. Frostbite was mild. Exhaustion was heavy. They wrapped her in blankets and told her to rest. As warmth slowly returned to her fingers, the pain followed, sharp and uncomfortable, but real. Pain meant she was alive. Commanders came later. They spoke in calm voices, asking for details, confirming what they already knew. Reports showed that the mission had worked better than anyone expected. Enemy resistance had collapsed quickly. The mountain pass was open, and the operation was a success. Words like impossible and unthinkable were repeated, but now they sounded different. She listened quietly. She did not interrupt or exaggerate. She simply explained what she saw, what she did, and why she made each decision. To her, it was not a story. It was a sequence of choices made under pressure. Others might call it heroic. She saw it as necessary. News of the mission spread through the ranks. Soldiers talked about it in low voices, almost like a legend. One sniper, one rifle, a frozen mountain pass cleared without a full assault. Some wanted to meet her. Others just wanted to know if it was true. She avoided attention when she could. Praise made her uncomfortable. In official records, her name appeared in reports and recommendations. Recognition followed, quiet but meaningful. Senior officers acknowledged that her decision to volunteer had changed the outcome of the entire operation. They admitted that without her, the trapped unit might not have survived. It was not easy for them to say, but it mattered. Days later, as operations continued and the situation stabilized, life slowly returned to routine. New missions replaced old ones. The mountain pass became just another route on the map. Snow continued to fall, covering old tracks and hiding the scars of conflict. She prepared to move on as well. Before leaving the area, she stood for a moment at the edge of the camp, looking back toward the mountains. They looked peaceful now, almost beautiful, glowing softly under the sky. It was hard to believe how close death had been up there. She did not feel like a hero. She felt tired, older somehow. But she also felt something steady inside. A quiet certainty that when the moment came, she had not stepped back. She had stepped forward. The mission would be remembered in briefings and reports, but most details would fade with time. What would remain was the result. Lives saved, a path opened, and proof that courage combined with skill could overcome even the harshest conditions. As she walked away, blending back into the world of uniforms and orders, the mountains stood behind her in silence. It no longer felt like a challenge. It felt like a reminder of what one person could do when they volunteered for the unthinkable and followed through one careful step at a time.